Picture yourself. It's late at night, the house is quiet, and you're not sleeping, right? And you're downstairs and you're kind of looking around and you see that stack of papers from the school. So you reach over and you get the latest IEP that has been sent to you. And yeah, there's simple strings like he's got a great personality. Kids love the jokes he tells. Um, yeah, there's goals, some the same from before. And yeah, there's whole service table and accommodations. But it's like this IEP is generic. It could be written for many other kids. And what's so frustrating is that you've just spent 2 hours in a meeting talking about your child's strengths, talking about how we can build on those when there's skills that they're lacking. And none of that is written in the IEP. Uh, this is what we talked about a couple weeks ago. And I want to follow up today because I want to give you some specific language that you could use for each of those dots as we're going along our way. So stay tuned because let's look. We're going to have one student, it's a second grader, and he has special ed services in the area of supporting his math. So if we go down here, I'm always in the way to the child's street. So let's look at some of the things we know about this student. One, I'll show this, is that he learns best by watching other kids. And he watches and he keeps track of almost those steps that each of his classmates does. And it's like once he's seen it repeated several times, then he feels confident that he can actually try it himself. So that's an important strength that we want in the IEP. We also know that he does well with manipulatives. We want that written in the IEP. And the other bit of knowledge we have is that he used base 10 blocks successfully in first grade. So what I want the whole team, the whole IEP team to realize is that these little nuggets that we know about this second grader, we want to capitalize on that and we want to take those strengths and connect them to the present level. So let's do that. And we see present levels. Now, present levels, you've probably heard, is like one of the foundations or the really foundation for your child's IEP. And this is because in the present levels, a lot of times it will have a box there for parent input or concerns. And that's important for you to have that input. However, what I find is even more effective is if we can get the team to agree that the things that you've written as your input, the school team agrees with. So let's just put them in the present level section. Because then it's not just like, oh, the parent reported that her son could do this at home. But it's like, no, is there agreement that he does well when he uses math manipulatives? Great. Let's put that in the present level section. Do we agree that he really has has to model from other kids. Have we noticed that? Great. Let's put that in the present level section. Now, besides strengths and besides your input, another thing that we see in the present level section that's really important are your child's needs. Usually, needs are like this laundry list of things that your child can't do. They struggle with math. They haven't learned their addition facts. What we're going to do instead is we're going to look at how we can reframe those needs so they help you build your case of inclusion right from page one. One of the things that we could have in the present level is that this student learns new math concepts most effectively when he can observe a peer model and use hands-on materials. If he needs those peer models, then those peer models are going to be in the general education classroom. That's the concept of how do we go from strengths and connect it to present levels. Now, the next important section in the IEP are the goals. So we've got the strengths written, we've got the present levels. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention for present levels is, of course, we want teacher input, and the teacher input hopefully talks about the progress on your child's goals from the previous year, has data about what your child's baseline is. That information, I don't expect you to have as a parent, but we want to make sure that teachers have that data in the present level section, right? So let's go on to goals. And so today we're not going to be talking about writing measurable goals. That's like a huge thing, and not only measurable, but meaningful goals, because that's like a series of workshops to do that. But today, what I wanted to do is just from your parent point of view, and especially when we're looking at that North Star and where we want your child to go, like what are some big picture goals that you have for your child? Do you want them to love reading? Do you wish that they could find a series of chapter books that would get them excited about actually reading? Do you want them to have those basic math skills so they can build on them later in school? So you don't have to have it phrased as, he will do such and such so many times with such percentage of accuracy. Instead, look at what do you want your child doing this next year? And how is that going to help them get to their North Star? So here's an example that I can show. And this one is a little more formal language than you really need, but this one could be an example of a big picture goal for that second grade student. So it says in the second grade math classroom, the student will use base 10 manipulatives in peer modeling to solve addition problems. So this is a goal that you could have written to give as input to the team. And then when you're in the IEP meeting, or if you, submit this ahead of time, the school team can figure out like, what the baseline is for this and how they're going to measure it. But your input is like, this is what I want my child doing when he goes, when it's math time, I want him being in his second grade class for math. I don't want him being pulled out. We know that he models from other kids. We know if he has manipulatives, he'll be successful. And that can happen in that second grade classroom. So once we have the strengths connected to the present levels, and then from the present levels, we've developed, for this kid, one math goal. So next, what we need to do is look at accommodations and modifications. Um, and so one of the things that I like to help parents with is to know the difference, right, between accommodation, modification. So for me, the word how is the word I associate with accommodation. So it's how your child is presented the information, how they're going to show what they've learned. If your child needs changes with that, then that would be an accommodation. And that's what you want to make sure is written in the IEP. Now, if your child needs, modifications, the word that I associate with that is what. So, what your child is going to be learning is different. It's not as complex. It's not as, you know, um, detailed learning as what most of the other kids in the class might be learning. But your child can still be there learning, right? So, here's some examples of an accommodation is the student can watch a peer model the task before trying it. And you might think, well, yeah, that's just common sense. But if it's something your child really needs, we want it written in the IEP as an accommodation. Um, we also could write as an accommodation that the student is offered base 10 blocks during instruction and practice. So those could both be accommodations. If the student would need a modification, it might be something like if the class is working on double digit addition and your child's learning addition with sums up to 20, that he uses manipulatives, and that's his modification. So if you notice that the student will still be in math class when we have this line of connected dots, that he'll still be with his classmates, and that this is what inclusion looks like with support. So now we're getting near the end of the IEP, where we connect from the strengths to the present level to the goals to accommodations, and now to what services are going to look like and what does specially designed instruction look like. Um, so here again, you might think about your child's IEP. Usually there's a table, a chart near the end of the IEP where they talk about, who's going to provide the math services, where is it going to be provided, how many minutes per day, per week. Um, and so that gives you some idea, right, of what's going to be happening for your child during math time. But it really needs to have more explanation. Now, depending on your IEP form that your district or state uses, most forms, because I work at a lot of states, so I get to see a lot of IEP forms. Most forms have a paragraph under that service table, and it's called the optional statement of service delivery. And that needs to be with the the services that your child's going to receive by the adults in the building. It needs to be really explained there so you have a picture of what your child is doing throughout the day. So um, one thing that I always like to have specific in the optional statement of service delivery is who's providing this? Is it a paraprofessional under the supervision of a special ed teacher? Is it a special ed teacher? Is it a co-teaching situation? And then as far as where the services are, is the SLP pushing in so your child gets written language support when the second grade class is doing written language. So those kinds of details we really, really want spelled out. Now, the other part of services is that specially designed instruction. So I wanted to show you how IDEA defines um, specially designed instruction, or you might hear it be the initials or the acronym SDI. So IDEA says specially designed instruction is adapting the content, the methodology, or delivery of instruction to address a child's unique needs resulting from their disability and to ensure access to the general curriculum. So, a lot of times we have discussions at IEP meetings, and parents will say, well, he got Wilson tutoring this summer, and we really want Wilson tutoring to happen during the school year. And the school will say, we can't really put in the name because then what if the school doesn't have that curriculum? What if there's teachers not trained in it? So we kind of do this dance of, okay, we could say such as Wilson, or we could describe the methodology that Wilson uses and use that description. And a lot of times schools just don't want to discuss instructional strategies or any of that at all at the IEP meeting. And they'll say, we trust our professionals, they've had the training. But I think it's important for us to also have that conversation. So let's look at um, some other points that we want to bring up here. So, what some schools will push back on is when you ask for push it. But we can talk about how these services are portable and they can be delivered to the general ed classroom. Um, with our second grade student here with the math goal, we want to make sure that that service grid has that it will happen in the general ed classroom, the length of time for the second grade math class. So we're really specific with that. So once we connect all of this, guess where we are? So when we start as strengths and interests of your child as the foundation, and when we connect that to present levels, when the present levels are connected to the goals, and goals are connected to accommodations and modifications, which then get connected to those services and specially designed instruction. And when we keep strengths and interests as the foundation, we reach the North Star for your child. So, and it might be, Charmaine, this sounds great, but I don't know how it really works. And it does work. And it can be challenging because we're looking at changing the culture of how IEPs are developed. We're changing the culture that it's the teachers that fill out the draft IEP and send it to the parent versus I suggest that as parents, you fill out information for the draft IEP and send that to the staff before they even start writing the draft. Because once a draft IEP is written, and especially when it's written by the staff, they have ownership in that. And trying to convince them to make some tweaks or changes sometimes can be challenging. So, my one tip for you also today is to give your input before the draft IEP is even written. So, I wanted to ask you if you opened your child's IEP today, would you see this collage of dots, or would you see this clear path of how do we start at the strengths and interests and get to present levels, goals, accommodations, services, and your child's North Star? So, what I would love to do, if you are watching the replay or with us live, if you could put in the comments one of your child's strengths, and if you're up to being a volunteer, we can work through going through connecting the dots for your child with that strength. So let me see and hear you. Let me pull up comment. Um, yes. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think. Um, what's a strength that your child has that you would go, I don't know, Charmaine, I'm not sure how this would connect. And we can brainstorm that. The other thing I wanted to share with you is um, right now, I do have a custom GPT that deals with your child's interests and strengths and gives you a more robust um, way of describing your child, not only as a learner and how they learn best, but as a whole person, like what lights them up, what they get so excited about. Um, so what I'm looking for, and I've had some parents already volunteer, is looking for some parents that want to test my custom GPT that's called This Is Me and give me some feedback on it because I want to make sure that more people use it in different kind of cases. And then what my plan is to um, make a custom GPT for each one of these sections. So you have a way of using an AI tool that will help you connect these dots. So that's something that excites you. Let me know. Um, and like I said, our first one that deals with strengths and interests is ready for you to test. So you can leave a note in the comments. You can send me a DM, but let me know if that interests you. Whoops. So I want to thank you for being here. I know your time is precious. And so I appreciate you taking time, either live or in the replay. And drop something that you had, like some aha moment that you had today. I'd love to hear your reactions. So, this is our second live show for February. Each month, I do two live Facebook live shows. So, up in March, you have two more opportunities. And we will look and see if we continue this conversation or there might be some other conversations we want to switch over to. So I am Charmaine Tanner. Thank you so much for being here. I am a parent of an adult son with Down syndrome. I've been a special ed teacher, a general ed teacher, an advocate. And all of that is because I believe that your child can contribute so much to classrooms, to school environment, to their communities. And that starts by them being seen as competent learners. And it means that we want your child to be happy at school, to be safe at school, and to be learning every day beside their classmates in that general ed classroom. So until we meet again in a couple of weeks, take care and we shall see you then. And let me see if I can find our closing song.